Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about 8.5, which is multiplying and dividing real numbers. So one thing I want you to remember, and I'll maybe put this up here just up here at the top. When we're multiplying numbers, a positive times a positive number gives me a positive. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. But then a positive times a negative will give us a negative. So if it's the same sign, it gives us positive. If they're opposite, it gives me negative. And that's when multiplying two numbers. So for the first one, if we think about this, we know what 2 times 4 is. It's 8. But that means I only have one negative sign. So that means my answer is going to be negative 8. Number 2, I've got a negative 4, negative 5. So remember, at any point in this video, you can always pause it and come back to it and see if you're doing this correctly. So negative 4 and a negative 5. So I know that two negatives make a positive. So anytime you're dealing with negative numbers, an even amount, and I'll maybe put this as a side note, an even amount of negatives gives us a positive number, but an odd number of negatives will give us a negative. And we're going to see that here in a second. Let's look at number 3. I've got 1 negative, 2 negative, and 3 negative. So 3 is my odd number, so I know my answer has to be negative. Now I'm going to just go ahead and multiply the numbers out. Well, 1 times 2 is, so this right here is 2. 3 times 4 is 12. Notice I'm not worried about the negative because I know what the answer is going to be. And then if I multiply 2 times 12, I get a negative 24. Exponents. Okay, all through me teaching with anything to do with exponents, I've always seen something like, okay, this could be negative 8, this could be positive 8, this could be negative 6 or positive 6. Okay, now on this, you do not say 2 times 3. Because 2 times 3 gives us 6. So the first or last set right here are not correct. It's either going to be negative 8 or positive 8. So what that negative signs do, now I want you to think about this for a second. When this says a 3, that means I'm multiplying negative 2 by itself 3 times. How many negative signs do I have? Well, I've got 3, so I know that's an odd number. So my answer is negative. So then I say, okay, what is 2 times 2? 4 times this other 2 gives me this negative 8. But the biggest mistake is in number 5. Now with orders of operations, we do exponents first. So we are not worried about that negative sign right now. So that negative, and then what that negative is, it's not attached to that 2, it's attached to the result of 2 to the third power, which is 2 times 2 times 2. Now 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, so that means that's a negative 8. Okay, now division, same rules apply. If you've got an even number of negative signs, it's positive. If you got an odd number, it's negative. So in this case, I only see one negative sign. So my answer is negative. So 4 goes into 25 times. So that's why it's negative 5. Now this is where we have a lot of mistakes. Negative 5 divided by 0. If you punch this in your calculator, you're going to get like undefined or an error. And that's because you cannot divide by 0. So this is what we call undefined. 0 cannot be on the bottom as a fraction. This can also be written as negative 5 divided by 0. Or this can be written like this. All of these are the same as negative 5 divided by 0. This is an undefined. But on my next number 8, 0 can be on top. So when 0 is on top, the answer is always 0. It doesn't matter what the bottom is, whether it's positive or negative, fraction, or whatever the case is, decimal. It's going to be 0. Now, this can also be written as 0 divided by negative 5, or negative 5 goes into 0. Okay? Translate the product of a negative 50 and a number. Well, the key is product. Product means multiplication. So that would be negative 50 and a number. I may just use a little lowercase n. Now, if this was a, I'm going to kind of change this around a little bit, but let's just say if I change this product and say quotient, quotient means dividing. So if this was the case, your negative 50 would be on top, whatever number or even letter, whatever comes first, will go on top, and the n separates it. So this would be negative 50 over n. What about negative 8 over 9 squared? Well, this is the same as negative 8 over 9 times negative 8 over 9. So in this case, I've got a pair of negatives, which would make it positive. So 8 times 8 is 64. 9 times 9 is 81. It's kind of a rule that we talked about a while back on dividing fractions. So in this case, we leave our 7/8 the same. But what we're going to do is we're going to change this division to multiplication by taking this and flipping the fraction. So now all we do is we go ahead and I cannot look at anything to reduce, like 7 and 1 and 7 and 8. So I'm going to multiply this across and say that's 49 over 8. Now if it's asking you to put it in a mixed number, how many times 8 goes into 49? 6 times, with 1 remaining over the denominator, which is 8. And finally, this is an order of operation example. So this is negative 14 minus. So what I want to do is I want to take that 4 and multiply it twice, because that's what the exponent says. Now I'm going to carry this out, negative 14. Then I'm going to say minus 4 times 4 is 16 over negative 5 times negative 3, which is a positive 15. Now, as you can recall earlier when we were adding and subtracting, negative 14 and negative 16, well, look at this. The signs drop. 14 and 16 you add up. That means if you owe me 14, you owe me 16, you owe me 30. That's why it's negative. So this would be negative 30 over 15. So I only see one negative sign, so that's an odd number, so it's negative. 15 goes into 30 2 times. Okay, guys, thank you for listening. Please tune in to my last section on 8.6, which is properties of real number. Thank you very much.